Commander Yevra of the Zalorian border fleet had spent 30 cycles patrolling the same stretch of empty space. She had watched nebulae drift, counted dying stars, and broken up 3 smuggling rings operating out of asteroid clusters. She had never seen anything that made her feel like prey. Until now. Contact at the edge of the sector, her sensor officer reported, his dorsal crest flattening against his skull, a sign of confusion rather than fear. Reading is incomplete. Yevra turned from the viewport, her 4 arms folding across her chest. Incomplete how? It registers as solid matter, metallic composition, but there's no heat signature, no radiation, no gravitational wake. The officer tapped his console twice. It's like something drew a ship on my screen but forgot to make it real. She crossed to the display. The object hung in the black between systems, a slim shape barely larger than a Corvette. Its hull was dark, not painted, but somehow light-absorbing in a way that made her eyes slide off it. Ancient was the wrong word. This thing looked like it had been waiting. Magnify. The image expanded. What emerged was not a wreck. No impact scars, no micrometeorite pitting, no solar bleaching. The vessel was pristine, its lines smooth and purposeful, its design nothing like the blocky warships of the Council or the ornamented cruisers of the Vorthan dynasty. It looked like a needle, like a question. Run a temporal decay scan. The officer hesitated. Commander, that requires a focused beam, if it's armed. It's been sitting here long enough for your grandmother to have found it. Yevra's voice carried no patience. Fire the scan. The beam crossed the distance in 3 seconds. The result came back in 4. Her officer's crest flattened completely. That's not possible. What isn't? The hull composition shows atomic decay consistent with. He stopped, started again. 40,000 cycles at minimum. Yevra felt the temperature in the bridge drop. 40,000 cycles predated the Zalorian Empire, predated the Vorthan dynasty, predated the Council of Eight's oldest recorded treaty. According to every history archive in known space, 40,000 cycles ago, the galaxy had been home to primitive tool users and not much else. Send a priority message to Council Command, she said, keeping her voice steady. Tell them we've found something that doesn't exist. Her communication officer's claws moved across the console, then stopped. There's a problem, Commander. What problem? The Vorthan border patrol on the other side of the nebula. They're scanning the same object, and they're moving toward it with weapons armed. Yevra looked back at the display. The ancient ship floated there, indifferent to the empires gathering around it. She thought about 40,000 cycles of silence. She thought about a vessel in perfect condition that had no right to exist. She thought about the fact that someone had built this thing, and whoever they were, they hadn't died out. They had simply stopped talking. Raise shields, she said, and someone get me a channel to Earth. Her navigation officer turned, his expression blank. Earth. The human homeworld. Their entire species has only been in space for 80 cycles, but right now, they're the only ones not screaming about this thing. She stared at the ancient ship as it hung in the void, waiting for something none of them understood. We need to know what they're not saying. The channel opened. The humans answered with a single word. Yes. The boarding party consisted of 6 beings, 2 Zalorian engineers, a Vorthan military observer forced on Yevra by treaty obligations, a council historian, and 2 human volunteers who had arrived at the Zalorian fleet within 3 hours of the distress call being sent. That speed should have worried Yevra more than it did. The humans called themselves Carter and Myra. No ranks, no affiliations, just 2 figures in mismatched pressure suits who moved like they had done this before. Carter was tall with close-cropped hair and hands that never stopped moving, tapping his thigh, checking seals, counting under his breath. Myra was smaller, darker, and completely still. She had not spoken since boarding Yevra's ship. Now they stood at the ancient vessel's main airlock, waiting for the cutting torch to finish its work. Standard approach, the Vorthen observer Kalen said for the fourth time. We secure the bridge, download the data core, and withdraw within the hour. The council historian, an elderly creature named Tess, adjusted her breathing apparatus. You don't understand. This ship is older than my entire field of study. Every surface is a discovery. Every surface is a potential weapon, Kalen snapped. The Vorthen dynasty claims this vessel as a relic of our creation. Your presence here is an insult. Myra looked at him for the first time. Her voice was soft. Your creation myth says your ancestors came from the sky in a silver ship, right? Kalen's spines bristled. That is sacred text. This ship is silver. Myra turned back to the airlock, and it's been waiting a long time. The torch finished. The outer door cycled open. Inside was darkness so complete that even the helmet lights seemed to shrink from it. The corridor beyond was narrow, built for beings smaller than Xylorians, smaller than Vorthens. Carter stepped through first, his light playing across walls covered in script that shifted as the beam moved. Not changing, responding. It's alive, Tess whispered. The material is adapting to the light. I've never seen anything like this. You've never seen anything from this era, Myra said. She pointed to a panel on the far wall. That's not a door. That's a diagnostic interface. This ship was maintained until the moment we arrived. Kalen pushed past her. The bridge is forward. We follow protocol. He moved down the corridor with the confidence of someone who had never been wrong in a way that mattered. The others followed. Carter stayed beside Myra, matching her pace. You feel it too, he said quietly. She nodded. It's not empty, it's dormant. They reached the bridge. The door opened at their approach. No handle, no mechanism, just a sudden absence of wall. Inside, the control stations were arranged in a circle facing a central holographic projector that had gone dark long ago. Kalen crossed to the primary console and began interfacing his scanner. Power levels are 0. No residual charge in any system. This vessel is a tomb. Tess moved to a wall display, her breathing apparatus hissing. Look at the configuration. The seats are adjustable. This ship wasn't built for one species. It was built for many, for anyone who could reach it. Myra walked to the central projector. She placed her hand on its surface. The ship screamed. Not sound, something deeper. A pulse that traveled through the deck plates, through the air, through the bones of everyone in the room. Lights flickered to life along every surface, not the harsh glare of artificial illumination, but a soft glow that seemed to come from the metal itself. Screens activated. Data flowed across them in languages no one recognized. And in the center of the room, a figure appeared. It was human, male, old in a way that had nothing to do with years. He wore a uniform that had no insignia, and his eyes looked through everyone in the room as if measuring them against a standard they could not see. Finally, the figure said, we were starting to think you'd never find us. He looked directly at Myra. Send the signal, they need to remember. Behind her, the ancient ship's engines powered up for the first time in 40,000 cycles. Kalen raised his weapon. Carter stepped between them. Don't, he said. And the ship transmitted. The message reached every listening post in the galaxy within 17 seconds. It bypassed encryption, ignored communication blackouts. It simply appeared on every screen, every comm system, every device capable of receiving a signal. A set of coordinates, a single word in a language so old that only the ship's hologram seemed to understand it. But every human who saw it translated the meaning without effort. Home. Ambassador Voss of Earth sat in the council chamber on Xylos Prime, surrounded by representatives of 12 species who had spent the last 3 hours shouting at each other. The Vorthen delegation demanded immediate military action to secure the vessel. The Council of 8 insisted on neutral arbitration. The Xylorians wanted to blow the ship into component atoms and pretend none of this had ever happened. Voss had not spoken once. He was a small man by human standards, unremarkable in every way. Gray hair, Gray suit, gray voice. He had served as Earth's ambassador for 20 years, and in that time he had become famous for saying nothing while everyone else talked themselves into exhaustion. Now the shouting stopped. The Vorthen High Representative, a massive creature covered in ceremonial scars, turned to face him. You have been quiet, Ambassador. That is either wisdom or cowardice. Which is it? Voss folded his hands on the table. The human vessel that was discovered. You're all treating it like a relic, like something from a past that belongs to no one. It belongs to the Vorthen dynasty, the High Representative snarled. It belongs to the Council, another delegate countered. It belongs to whoever can hold it, a third added. Voss nodded slowly. That's the problem. You're all thinking about who owns it. You should be thinking about who built it. The room went quiet, not the dramatic silence of the banned phrase, but a genuine cessation of sound. The kind that happens when a room full of predators suddenly realizes it might be prey. What are you saying? The Zalorian Council President asked. Voss stood up. I'm saying that my government has been aware of that ship's existence for 30 years. We've known where it was, we've known what it contained, and we chose not to approach it. Why? Because the last time we touched something like that, we lost a colony. He pressed a control on the table. A holographic display showed a star system on the edge of human space. Then it showed the same system 2 days later. The star dimmed, the planets cracked, the asteroid belt scattered into debris. That was a quarantine beacon, an automated defense left behind by whoever built that ship. It didn't attack us. It simply corrected our trajectory, and in doing so, it released enough energy to boil an ocean. Voss looked around the chamber. You're all worried about who claims the vessel. You should be worried about why it woke up now, why it chose this moment to call us home. The Zalorian president leaned forward. What does it want? I don't know, but every human on every world heard that transmission. Not through speakers, not through radios. Voss touched his temple. Here, we all heard it, and we're all moving. Moving where? Voss smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. To the coordinates, all of us, every ship we have, every ship we've been hiding. The chamber erupted again, but this time the shouting had an edge of fear. Because in the display behind Voss, sensor data showed hundreds of human vessels powering up across the galaxy, in asteroid fields, in gas giant shadows, in places no one had thought to look. The young species with 80 cycles of spaceflight had been lying. And the ancient ship had just told everyone the truth. Myra watched the hologram flicker as the ancient vessel systems came online one by one. The human-shaped figure, the AI, she realized, had not moved since delivering its message. It simply stood in the center of the bridge, watching the alien boarding party panic. Kalen had his weapon trained on Carter. Thess was recording everything, her breathing apparatus clicking in rapid bursts. The Zalorian engineers had retreated to the corridor, their crests flat against their skulls in pure terror. Only Myra remained still. You're not a recording, she said to the figure. You're a person, or you were. The AI tilted its head. The gesture was so human that it hurt to watch. I was many things. Now I am a reminder. It looked past her through the hull toward the distant points of light that were Vorthen and Zylorian warships. They're coming, all of them. They think this is a weapon. Is it? No, the AI's image flickered. It's a library, a seed vault, a warning. We built this vessel at the end of our first empire when we realized what we had become. Myra stepped closer. What did you become? Alone. The word hung in the air. Behind her, Carter had lowered his hands, and even Kalen had stopped shouting. The AI continued. Our creators, the ones who made us, they were not human. They were something older, something that learned to travel between stars before this galaxy had planets, and they made us in their image, not as slaves, as children. Children who grew up, Myra said. Children who surpassed their parents, who discovered truths the creators had hidden, who built weapons the creators could not imagine. The AI's voice softened. The creators were afraid, so they left, and we were alone with power we did not earn and did not understand. Thess spoke up, her voice trembling. What happened to your empire? We burned it, every world, every colony, every record. We erased 10,000 cycles of history because we could not trust ourselves with what we had learned. The AI looked at each of them in turn. Then we scattered. We seeded primitive colonies on worlds across the galaxy. We gave ourselves new languages, new bodies, new memories, and we waited. Waited for what? Kalen demanded. For someone to find this ship and ask the right question. The AI's gaze settled on Myra. She did not ask about weapons. She asked about us. That is the difference between conquerors and stewards. Outside, alarms blared. Carter checked his wrist display. Vorthen Fleet, 15 ships. They'll be in weapons range in 4 minutes. Kalen's spines rose. You see, the dynasty will claim this vessel. The human trickery ends now. Myra turned to the AI. Can you stop them? I can do nothing. This ship has no weapons. It was built as a monument, not a fortress. Then why did you wake up? The AI smiled, a sad, knowing expression that belonged to someone who had seen too much. Because the signal I sent wasn't just to humans. It was to the defense grid our creators left behind. The one they told us never to use. The one we buried on Earth 10,000 years ago. Myra felt the deck shift beneath her feet. Not the ancient ship, something else. Something vast waking up in the dark between stars. The creators didn't abandon us, the AI said softly. They just wanted to make sure we were ready. The first Vorthen weapon struck the ancient vessel's hull. It did nothing. The second shot never reached its target. Because between the Vorthen fleet and the ancient ship, space began to tear open, and through the gap, something impossibly large began to emerge. The Vorthen flagship Dominion fired its main cannon at the ancient vessel. The beam of compressed particles crossed the distance in less than a second. It should have vaporized a ship the size of a corvette. Instead, the beam bent. Not deflected, not absorbed, bent, curving around the ancient vessel like water around a stone, continuing past it into empty space. Commander Yevra watched from the Xylorian patrol ship and felt something she had not experienced since childhood. What just happened? Her sensor officer asked. I don't know, she admitted, but I think we're about to find out. The rent in space had grown to the size of a small moon. Through it, shapes moved. Not warships, not stations, but structures that defied classification. They were geometric in the way that fractals were geometric, repeating patterns that nested inside themselves down to impossible scales. They glowed with a light that had no source, no heat, no radiation signature. They simply existed, and their existence was rewriting local physics. Kalen had stopped shouting. He stood at the ancient vessel's viewport, his weapon hanging limp at his side, watching the structures emerge. The dynasty's holy texts speak of this, he whispered. The Silver Passage, the gateway between what is and what was. It's a wormhole stabilizer, Carter said flatly. We have theories about this, mathematical frameworks, nothing practical. This is engineering that predates mathematics. The AI's hologram flickered back to life. Predates your mathematics. Our creators understood reality differently. They did not discover physics. They wrote it. These structures are the source code of the universe's operating system. Myra turned from the viewport. You said they left because they were afraid. Afraid of what? Of us? The AI's voice carried no pride, only exhaustion. We learned to modify these structures, to change the laws of reality in small ways. Our creators watched us rewrite gravity on a moon, then on a planet, then on a star. They saw where the path led, so they left us a choice. What choice? The structures can be used for creation or destruction. We chose destruction. We burned our empire to prevent ourselves from burning the galaxy. The AI gestured to the viewport. The structures you see now are the ones we buried. the ones we hoped no one would ever need. Outside, the Vorthen fleet had stopped firing. The Dominion hung motionless, its crew staring at sensor readings that made no sense. The geometric structures had arranged themselves in a sphere around the ancient vessel, pulsing with that sourceless light. Then one of the structures moved. It folded, not turned, not rotated, but folded along axes that didn't exist, and a beam of pure mathematical certainty lanced out. It struck the Dominion not as energy, but as information. The warship's hull remained intact. Its systems remained online, but its crews suddenly understood exactly how fragile they were. Every weapon on the Dominion powered down simultaneously, not disabled, convinced. On the bridge of the ancient vessel, Kalen fell to his knees. "We were wrong," he said. "This isn't a relic, it's a test, and we failed." Myra looked at the AI. "What happens now?" The hologram flickered. "Now the humans decide, because the signal I sent wasn't just a call to arms, it was a summons. Your species has been hiding for 10,000 cycles. The structures won't wait forever." Behind her, Carter's wrist display showed 100 human ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. More arriving every second. Warships, transports, colony vessels converted for combat. "You have your fleet," the AI said. "The question is what you do with it." Myra watched the geometric structures pulse in the darkness. She thought about a species that had burned its own empire to protect others. She thought about 10,000 cycles of forgetting, of starting over, of pretending to be weak. She thought about the weapon that had ended the first human empire. And she realized it was still there, waiting. "Open a channel to Earth," she said. "Tell Ambassador Voss we need the map." Ambassador Voss received the transmission in the council chamber, surrounded by beings who had stopped shouting and started praying. The geometric structures had appeared on every screen, their impossible shapes searing themselves into the minds of everyone who saw them. He had expected this, he had feared this, and now that it was here, he felt nothing but exhaustion. "Ambassador," the Zalorian president said, her voice stripped of authority, "what are those things?" Voss pressed his palms against the table. "They're a warning, written in a language older than stars, and my government has known about them for longer than we've known about the ship." The chamber went still. "We found one of these structures 80 years ago, buried under a mountain range on a dead world. Our best scientists spent decades trying to understand it. They failed, but they learned enough to translate the records left behind by whoever built them." He activated the display. The image showed a diagram, fractal, impossible, beautiful, and in the center a schematic of a device. "That's the map the ship mentioned. It leads to the place where the first human empire ended, where our ancestors destroyed themselves rather than use these structures as weapons." The Vorthen High Representative had gone pale beneath his scars. "You're saying your species had access to this power and chose to forget it?" "We chose to grow up." Voss's voice hardened. "The creators gave us the structures as a gift. We were supposed to use them to build. Instead, we tried to conquer. When we realized what we were becoming, we burned everything and started over. No memory, no technology, no advantage." "But you remembered," the council president said. "Your ambassador said you knew about the ship for 30 years. "We didn't remember, we rediscovered, and when we did, we made a choice." Voss looked around the chamber. "We decided not to touch the structures, not to wake the ship, not to claim what was ours, because we weren't sure we had changed." The display flickered. A new image appeared, a planet, green and blue, spinning slowly against the black. "That's Earth, where we buried the key to the structures, where we hid the weapon that ended our first empire, and where every human ship is gathering right now." On the screen, hundreds of vessels converged above the human homeworld. Warships, yes, but also freighters, research vessels, civilian craft pressed into service. They formed a sphere around the planet, waiting. "Your fleet can't stop us," the Vorthen High Representative said, but his voice lacked conviction. "We don't want you to stop us. Voss replied. "We want you to watch, because what happens next decides the future of every species in this galaxy." Myra's voice came through the chamber's speakers. "Ambassador, the AI says the structures are destabilizing. We have maybe an hour before they collapse, or worse, activate on their own." "Understood." Voss turned to the council. "The ancient ship's AI told us something interesting. It said our creators left the structures as a test, not of strength, of wisdom. The first human empire failed that test. Now we have a second chance." "And if you fail again?" the Zalorian president asked. "Then we'll burn it all down again, and we'll start over, and we'll keep starting over until we get it right." Voss straightened his jacket. "That's what it means to be human, not perfection, persistence." He walked toward the chamber's exit. "Where are you going?" someone called after him. "To Earth, to vote." He paused at the door. "Every human gets a say in this. Not just governments, not just leaders, every single one of us. Because this decision is too important to leave to the people who think they know best." The doors closed behind him. On the display, the geometric structures pulsed faster. And on Earth, for the first time in 10,000 years, the human species prepared to decide its own fate. The vote lasted 3 hours. Every human on every world, every station, every ship, they cast their choice through a network the ancient ship's AI had activated. A network older than any civilization, designed to carry the voice of a species across the void. Myra watched the numbers climb on the ancient vessel's central display. Carter stood beside her, his hand finding hers without either of them acknowledging it. The AI's hologram flickered in the corner, its expression unreadable. Kalen had stopped praying. Thess had stopped recording. The Zalorian engineers had returned to the bridge, their fear replaced by something closer to wonder. "They're actually doing it," Kalen said. "Every single one of them, even the children." "We said this was everyone's choice," Carter replied. "We meant it." The final tally appeared. Myra felt her breath catch. Option 1. Claim the structures. Use them to defend humanity and its allies. Risk repeating the mistakes of the First Empire. Option 2. Seal the structures again. Wait another 10,000 cycles. Hope that someone else found a better answer. Option 3. Destroy them. The vote was not close. 92% of humanity had chosen the third option. Myra turned to the AI. "You said the structures could be used for creation or destruction. Can they destroy themselves?" The AI was silent for a long moment. Then it smiled, not the sad expression from before, but something warmer, hopeful. "They were designed with a self-destruct sequence. Our creators included it as a final gift, a way to ensure that if their children ever truly grew up, they could choose to walk away from power." "Then that's what we'll do," Carter said. Outside, the human fleet began to move, not toward the Vorthan ships, not toward the geometric structures, toward Earth, forming a protective sphere around the planet as the structures began to pulse faster. "Wait," Kalen said. "If you destroy them, you'll lose everything. The knowledge, the power, the ability to protect yourselves." "We never had that power," Myra said. "We just borrowed it from our parents, and we've decided we don't want to live in their shadow anymore." The AI raised a hand. The ancient vessel's systems hummed, not with weapons but with communication. A signal pulsed outward, carrying the self-destruct sequence to every structure in the galaxy. The geometric shapes began to fold, not collapsing, withdrawing, retreating along the axes of reality they had emerged from. Their light dimmed, then guttered, then vanished. Space returned to normal. The Vorthan fleet sat silent, their weapons still disabled. The Zylorian patrol ships drifted without orders, and the ancient vessel, the library, the seed vault, the warning, began to power down. The AI's hologram grew faint. "You chose well," it said. "Our creators would be proud." "Will we see you again?" Myra asked. "You will never need to." The AI's voice softened. "That is the point of growing up." The hologram faded. The ancient vessel's lights dimmed, and in the sudden silence, Myra heard something she had never heard before. The galaxy holding its breath. She turned to Carter. What now? He looked at the viewport, at the stars, at the distant glow of Earth, at the fleet of ships that had followed them here. Now we go home, and we figure out who we are without someone else's power to lean on. Behind them, Kalen spoke. His voice was rough. The Vorthan dynasty will want answers. The Council will want reparations. The Zalorians will want guarantees. Then they'll get what we can give them, Carter said. But not more than that. We're not your saviors. We're not your enemies. We're just a species that made a choice. Kalen nodded slowly. That is more terrifying than any weapon. Myra almost laughed. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said about us. She turned to the viewport one last time. The ancient ship systems were nearly dark now. Only emergency lights remained, casting soft shadows across the bridge. In the distance, the human fleet began to break formation, ships dispersing toward their homeworld, toward the lives they had left behind. The vote had been clear. Destroy the power. Walk away from the inheritance. Choose to be small and vulnerable and free. It was the most human decision imaginable. Set course for Earth, Myra said. The ancient vessel's engines hummed, one final gift from a ghost, and carried them home. Behind them, the galaxy began to rebuild. The Vorthan dynasty sued for peace. The Council of Eight drafted new treaties. The Zalorians expanded their patrols. And humanity went back to work, to building, to arguing, to failing and trying again. Because they had learned something the structures could never teach. Power was not the answer. Wisdom was not the answer. The answer was the choice itself. The endless, painful, beautiful choice to keep going, to keep growing, to keep choosing each other over everything else. The ancient ship drifted into dormancy, its purpose fulfilled. But on Earth, in every city and every field and every home, a new purpose was being written. And for the first time in 10,000 cycles, it was entirely their own.